Hi team, Miss Vaughn here to read you the rest of chapter 19 of Beloved. We're going to be starting from page 213, at the end of that very first paragraph at the top of the page. So stamp paid, remember, he's thinking about Baby Suggs. Baby Suggs makes these comments right before she kind of surrenders to her house before she dies about how white people took everything from her. Talks about her children, even when she's her children, Hallie specifically, because Hallie has to work off her debt in order for her to be free. And then they also take away the community that she built, the house that she was given, and then her daughter-in-law and one of her grandchildren because of the legacy of abuse that happens, and also the legacy of the abuse of power that happens from white people to Black people. So Stamp Paid is thinking about that, as he's also thinking about, damn, should I have really told Paul D that Sethe killed her own child? Was it even my business to do it? And then as he's thinking about how white people caused Baby Suggs all of this pain in her lifetime, he starts to think about the history of white people in his own experience. And he starts at page 212 at the bottom. And if you guys watch the previous videos, there's all of this really violent graphic language that's used to show that, or to counter this idea that Toni Morrison has kind of planted within us since the beginning of the book, that Black people have been dehumanized throughout the course of American history. And that is not necessarily a reflection of Black people. It's a reflection of the people who are doing the dehumanization. And Stamp Paid really plays that up here in this section, because he makes this comment that, oh, when white people like colonize, or when they think about Black people, or when they talk about Black people in certain ways, they make them seem like wild, or that they have to be tamed. And we saw some of that language in chapter 16. But for Stamp Paid, he's like, no, actually, it's white people that need to have, who practice this thing called racism, as Toni Morrison says. They're the ones who actually need to be tamed, because they're the ones who are acting the most wild and the most inhumane. Okay, page 213, first full paragraph. When he got to his house, he was too tired to eat the food his sister and nephews had prepared. He sat on the porch in the cold till way past dark and went to his bed only because his sister's voice calling him was getting nervous. He kept the ribbon. The skin smell nagged him, and his weakened marrow made him dwell on Baby Suggs's wish to consider what in the world was harmless. He hoped she stuck to blue, yellow, maybe green, and never fixed on red. Mistaking her, upbraiding her, owing her, now he needed to let her know he knew, and to get right with her and her kin. So in spite of his exhausted morrow, he kept on through the voices and tried once more to knock at the door of 124. This time, although he couldn't cipher but one word, he believed he knew who spoke them, the people of the broken necks, of fire-cooked blood, and Black girls who had lost their ribbons, were roaring. Okay, so remember that Stamp Paid keeps going to 124 to knock on the door to apologize to Sethe for telling Paul D that she killed her daughter. And every time he goes to the door, he hears all of these voices speaking inside. We know that physically, it's only Sethe, Beloved, and Denver. But because Beloved is making so many characters relive their past, Beloved has also brought with her the voices of the past too. So he hears these voices, and as it's described here, it says the people of the broken necks, of fire-cooked blood, and Black girls who had lost their ribbons, what a roaring. So we have talked so often about how Beloved's purpose of her return is to figure out why she was killed. To really understand why she's killed, she not only has to understand Sethe's motivations, but she also has to understand the society that she lives in. And so her figuring it out is also like her bringing all of history with her to figure it out too. Sethe had gone to bed smiling. Okay, so now we're switching perspectives, and we're going to be looking at Sethe in this next section. Sethe had gone to bed smiling, and remember that they have just gotten back from their bonding experience of ice skating. And the women are becoming more and more dependent on each other now that Paul D is out of the house, and it's just the three of them physically there together. Sethe had gone to bed smiling, eager to lie down and unravel the proof for the conclusion she had already leapt to. Fondle the day and circumstances of Beloved's arrival and the meaning of that kiss in the clearing. She slept instead and woke, still smiling to a snow-bright morning, cold enough to see her breath. She lingered a moment to collect the courage to throw off the blankets and hit a chilly floor. For the first time, she was going to be late for work. Downstairs, she saw the girls sleeping where she'd left them, but back to back now, each wrapped tight in blankets, breathing into their pillows. The pair and a half of skates were lying up by the front door. The stockings hung on a nail behind the cooking stove to dry, had not. Sethe looked at Beloved's face and smiled. Quietly, carefully, she stepped around her to wake the fire. First a bit of paper, then a little kindling, not too much, just a taste until it was strong enough for more. She fed its dance until it was wild and fast. When she went outside to collect more wood from the shed, she did not notice the man's frozen footprints. Those are Stamp Paid's footprints. She crunched around to the back to the cord piled high with snow. After scraping it clean, she filled her arms with as much dry wood as she could. She even looked straight at the shed, smiling at the things she would not have to remember now, thinking, she ain't even mad with me, not a bit. Okay, so Sethe there is recognizing the fact that now that she knows that Beloved is her daughter, then she also knows that Beloved is starting to figure out why she was killed. So Sethe, the one who introduced us to this idea of a rememory, she's thinking about the rememory that Beloved experienced in the shed, which is kind of crazy to think about, and that they know things about each other without us having to have read that it got communicated, but some way it gets communicated to each other. Obviously, the hand-holding shadows she had seen on the road were not Paul D, Denver, and herself, but, quote, us three, end quote. The three holding on to each other skating the night before, the three sipping flavored milk. And since that was so, if her daughter could not come back from the timeless place, certainly her sons could and would come back from wherever they had gone. Sethe covered her front teeth with her tongue against the cold. Hunched forward by the burden in her arms, she walked back around the house to the porch, not once noticing the frozen tracks she stepped in. Inside, the girls were still sleeping. Although they had changed positions while she was gone, both drawn to the fire. Dumping the armload into the wood box made them stir but not wake. Sethe started the cooking stove as quietly as she could, reluctant to wake the sisters, happy to have them asleep at her feet while she made breakfast. Too bad she would be late for work. Too bad. Once in 16 years? That's not too bad. She had beaten 2 eggs into yesterday's hominy, formed it into patties, and fried them with some ham pieces before Denver woke completely and groaned. Back stiff? Oh, yeah. Sleeping on the floor is supposed to be good for you. Hurts like the devil, said Denver. Could be that fall you took. Denver smiled. That was fun. She turned to look down at Beloved snoring lightly. Should I wake her? No, let her rest. She likes to see you off in the morning. I'll make sure she does, said Sethe, and thought, be nice to think first before I talk to her. Let her know I know. Think about all I got to remember no more. Do like Baby said. Think on it, then lay it down for good. Paul D convinced me there was a world out there that I could live in it. Should have known better. Did know better. Whatever is going on outside my door ain't for me. The world is in this room. This here's all there is and all there needs to be. Okay, so Sethe is rationalizing in her head the fact that now that she has her daughter back, she really does not have to ever leave 124 again, that they can just live there and all be obsessed with each other. But we know that that is not healthy, and we're going to see that start to develop in this chapter. Okay, even though there is a gap in the page there, it's just to signify to us that they're going deeper into Sethe's mind. They ate like men, ravenous and intent, saying little, content with the company of the other and the opportunity to look in her eyes. When Sethe wrapped her head and bundled up to go to town, it was already mid-morning. And when she left the house, she neither saw the prince nor heard the voices that ringed 124 like a noose. Trudging in the ruts left earlier by wheels, Sethe was excited to giddiness by the things she no longer had to remember. I don't have to remember nothing. I don't have to explain. She understands it all. I can forget how Baby Suggs's heart collapsed, how we agreed it was consumption without a sign of it in the world. Her eyes when she brought my food, I can forget that. And how she told me that Howard and Bugler were all right, but wouldn't let go each other's hands. Played that way. Stayed that way, especially in their sleep. She handed me the food from a basket, things wrapped small enough to get through the bars, whispering news. Mr. Bodwin going to see the judge in chambers, she kept on saying. In chambers, like I knew what it meant, or she did. The colored ladies of Delaware, Ohio, had drawn up a petition to keep me from being hanged. That 2 white preachers had come round and wanted to talk to me, pray for me. that a newspaper man came too. She told me the news, and I told her I needed something for the rats. She wanted Denver out and slapped her palms when I wouldn't let her go. Where are your earrings? She said. I'll hold them for you. I told her the jailer took them to protect me from myself. He thought I could do some harm with the wire. Baby Suggs covered her mouth with her hand. School teacher left town, she said, filed a claim and rode on off. They're going to let you out for the burial, she said. Not the funeral, just the burial. And they did. The sheriff came with me and looked away when I fed Denver in the wagon. Neither Howard nor Bugler would let me near them, not even to touch their hair. I believe a lot of folks were there, but I just saw the box. Reverend Pike spoke in a real loud voice, but I didn't catch a word except for the first two. Dearly beloved. And 3 months later, when Denver was ready for solid food and they let me out for good, I went and got you a gravestone, but I didn't have money enough for the carving, so I exchanged, bartered, you might say, what I did have. And I'm sorry this day I never thought to ask him for the whole thing. All I heard of what Reverend Pike said, dearly beloved, which is what you are to me, and I don't have to be sorry about getting only one word. And I don't have to remember the slaughterhouse and the Saturday girls who worked its yard. I can't forget what I did, changed Baby Suggs's life. No clearing, no company, just laundry and shoes. I can forget it all now because as soon as I got the gravestone in place, you made your presence known in the house and worried us all just to distraction. I didn't understand it then. I thought you were mad with me. I know, and now I know that that if you was, you ain't now, because you came back here to me, and I was right all along. There's no world outside my door. I only need to know one thing. How bad is the scar? Okay, so again, Sethe rationalizing in her head that she doesn't have to remember all these things that are so painful for her, that she can just forget them. But forgetting is not going to be something that is helpful for her because it's going to isolate her even more than before. Okay, let's continue. 217. As Sethe walked to work, late for the time in 16 years and wrapped in a timeless present, Stamp Paid fought fatigue and the habit of a lifetime. Baby Suggs refused to go to the clearing because she believed they had one. He refused to acknowledge any such victory. Baby had no back door, so he braved the cold and a wall of talk to knock on the one she did have. He clutched the red ribbon in the pocket for strength, softly at first, then harder. At the last, he banged furiously, disbelieving it could happen. But the door of a house with colored people in it did not fly open in his presence. He went to the window and wanted to cry. Sure enough, there they were, not a one of them heading to the door. Worrying his scrap of ribbon to shreds, the old man turned and went down the steps. Now curiosity joined his shame and his debt. Two backs curled away from him as he looked at the window. One had a head he recognized, the other troubled him. He didn't know her, and he didn't know anybody it could be. Nobody but nobody visited that house. After a disagreeable breakfast, he went to see Ella and John to find out what they knew. Perhaps there he could find out if after all these years of clarity, he had misnamed himself and there was yet another debt he owed. Born Joshua, he renamed himself when he handed over his wife to his master's son. Handed her over in the sense that he did not kill anybody, thereby himself, because his wife demanded he stay alive. Okay, there's an important note that you need to add to your book there about Stamp Paid. Stamp Paid is the name that he gave himself after he was freed, and we don't know whether or not he freed himself or he ran away or if he was eventually sold by his slave master. Okay, there is a detail here that you need to know. He renamed himself when he handed over his wife to his master's son. Okay, so I want you to think about what does that mean to hand over your wife to the master's son? Handed her over in the sense that he did not kill anybody there by himself. Okay, so when he renames himself, like what is that symbolic for if it says that he did not kill anybody there by himself? Because his wife demanded he stay alive. So there's this playing around with life and death and like what you will do for someone that you love, that we've seen throughout the whole book with Sethe and Beloved, but we also get hints at it here with Stamp Paid and his previous wife. Otherwise, she reasoned, where and to whom could she return when the boy was through? With that gift, he decided that he didn't owe anybody anything. Whatever his obligations were, that act paid them off. He thought it would make him rambunctious, renegade, a drunkard even, the debtlessness, and in a way it did. But there was nothing to do with it. Work well, work poorly, work a little, work not at all. Make sense, make none. Sleep, wake up, like somebody, dislike others. It didn't seem much of a way to live, and it brought him no satisfaction. So he extended his debtlessness to other people by helping them pay out and off whatever they owed in misery. Beaten runaways, he ferried them and rendered them paid for, gave them their own bill of sale, so to speak. You paid it, now life owes you. And the receipt, as it were, was a welcome door that he never had to knock on, like John and Ella's, in front of which he stood and said, "Who in there?" only once, and she was pulling on the hinge. Okay, so Stamp Paid is very suspicious of Beloved. So he's going to go to John and Ella to see if they've heard any explanation of who this woman is and where she comes from. "Where you been keeping yourself? I told John must be cold if Stamp Paid stay inside." "Oh, I've been out." He took off his cap and massaged his scalp. "Out where? Not by here." Ella hung 2 suits of underwear on the line behind the stove. "Was over to Baby Suggs's this morning." "What you want in there?" asked Ella. "Somebody invite you?" "That's baby's kin. I don't need no invite to look after her people." Ella was unmoved. She had been Baby Suggs's friend and Sethe's too, till the rough time. Except for a nod at the carnival, she hadn't given Sethe the time of day. "Somebody new in there, a woman. Thought you might know who she is." "Ain't no people in this town I don't know about," she said. "What's she look like?" "You sure that wasn't Denver?" "I know Denver. This girl's narrow." "You see?" "I know what I see." "Might see anything at all at 124. "True. Better ask Paul D," she said. "Can't locate him," said Stamp, which was the truth, although his efforts to find Paul D had been feeble. He wasn't ready to confront the man whose life he had altered with his graveyard information. "He's sleeping in the church," said Ella. "The church?" Stamp Paid was shocked and very hurt. "Yeah, asked Reverend Pike if he could stay in the cellar. It's cold as charity in there." "I expect he knows that." "What'd he do that for?" "He's a touch proud, seemed like." "He don't have to do that. Any number will take him in." Ella turned around to look at Stamp Paid. "Can nobody read minds long distance? All we have to do is ask somebody." "Why? Why he have to ask? Can nobody offer? What's going on? Since when a black man come to town to have to sleep in a cellar like a dog?" "Unrile yourself, Stamp." "Not me. I'm going to stay riled till somebody gets some sense and leastway act like a Christian. It's only a few days he been there." "Shouldn't be no days. You know all about it." "And don't give him a hand?" "That don't sound like you, Ella. Me and you been pulling colored folk out the water more than 20 years. Now you tell me you can't offer a man a bed? A workman, too? A man that can pay his own way?" He asked. I give him anything. "Why's that necessary all of a sudden?" "I don't know him all that well. You know he's colored." "Stamp, don't tear me up this morning. I don't feel like that." "It's her, ain't it?" "Her who?" "Sethe." Okay, so Paul D, he's sleeping in the basement of the church. Stamp Paid is offended that no one has offered to help him, and his suspicion is that no one wants to help Paul D because Paul D was previously in a relationship with Sethe. So anyone who's had a relationship with her is kind of like written off by the community. Hold on, don't jump if you can't see the bottom. "Girl, give it up. We've been friends too long to act like this." "Well, who can tell what all went on in there?" "Look here, I don't know who Sethe is or none of her people." "What?" "All I know is she married Baby Suggs's boy, and I ain't sure I know that. Where is he, huh? Baby never laid eyes on her till John carried her to the door with a baby I strapped on her chest." "I strapped that baby, and you way off track with that wagon. Her children know who she was, even if you don't." "So what? I ain't saying she wasn't their mammy, but who's to say they was Baby Suggs's grandchildren? How she get on board and her husband didn't? And tell me this, how she have that baby in the woods by herself? Said a white woman come out of the trees and helped her? Shoot, you believe that? A white woman? Well, I know what kind of white that was." "Oh no, Ella. Anything white floating around in the woods, if it ain't got a shotgun, it's something I don't want no part of." Okay, so there's this hint here about how all of the community, they believe in ghosts. So Ella even thinks that maybe Amy Denver was not a real person, but a ghost that helped Sethe give birth to her child. And also Ella is hinting at the suspicion that she has of Sethe, that she doesn't know if all of Sethe's children are actually her children. And we know that, okay, yeah, that might be a jerk assumption for Ella to make. But if we're thinking about what we know about Baby Suggs's past, Baby Suggs had 8 children by 6 different men. So Ella's assumption does have a little bit of credibility to it, considering the institution of slavery and how childbirth was used not in an effort to create a family, but as an economic system. So she doesn't even really know if those are really baby Suggs's grandchildren. And then there's also this like hint of a suggestion that maybe Sethe like abandoned Hallie when Ella asked the question how she get on board and her husband didn't. Okay, let's keep reading. Top of page 221. You all was friends, yeah, till she showed herself. Ella, I ain't got no friends take a handsaw to their own children. You in deep water, girl. Uh-uh. I'm on dry land and I'm gonna stay there. You the one wet. What's any of what you talking got to do with Paul D? What run him off? Tell me that. I run him off. You? I told him about I showed the newspaper about the what Sethe did. Read it to him. He left that very day. You didn't tell me that. I thought he knew. He didn't know nothing, except her from when they was at that place Baby Suggs was at. He knew Baby Suggs? Sure he knew her. Her boy Hallie too. And left when he found out what Sethe did? Looked like he might have a place to stay after all. So Stamp Pade's making a joke here that because Paul D left as soon as he found out that Sethe killed her own child, that maybe the community will let him in now because they feel as judgmental, or he feels as judgmental as the community does of Sethe. But what you say casts a different light. I thought, but Stamp Pade knew what she thought. You didn't come here asking about him, Ella said. You came about some new girl. That's so? Well, Paul D must know who she is, or what she is. Your mind is loaded with spirits. Everywhere you look, you see one. You know as well as I do that people who die bad don't stay in the ground. He couldn't deny it. Jesus Christ himself didn't. So Stamp ate a piece of Ella's head cheese to show that there were no bad feelings and set out to find Paul D. He found him on the steps of the Holy Redeemer, holding his wrist between his knees and looking red-eyed. Okay, so the next section is going to be a long memory of Sethe's last day at Sweet Home, or last couple of days at Sweet Home. So I'm actually going to pause there and start a new video. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.